All right. Spring practice brings to mind, of course, improvement, fundamentals,
Mhm.
techniques, all those good things. Players need to get better. They give the time to hone their craft without the pressure of a game forthcoming. When you look at Miami's personnel needs, the roster composition,
Yeah.
where would you like to see this team 6 weeks from now in regards to, okay, I feel better because this was accomplished, or we didn't hear too much of that?
Number one, the thing that I always start with, no injuries. Like I need the blue chip talent that's on all over this roster to be healthy or get healthy. Now there's going to be some guys who are held out because they had procedures or injuries previously. Somebody like a Carson Beck, who Mario Cristobal, when interviewed on campus yesterday, said could start throwing in a couple of weeks. That's early side work, guys. That's not all of the number one reps in spring, but he's on the pace where, yeah, he can start probably on track to start throwing in the next couple of weeks. That's outstanding. Charles Brantley, I believe, is out for spring. He had a little procedure. I know CJ Daniels out for spring, still rehabbing the heel that bothered him at LSU. Jadis Richards still rehabbing his knee injury from the Duke game late last season. This is the time for that kind of stuff. So, number one, I don't want any extra injuries. Take the time to get better. And then, really, I need to see and hear about guys taking steps forward. I would feel in a much better position as a team if I hear insert quarterback here. My personal preference would be Luke Nickel, but I'm open to any of them. I would like to hear that guys are taking steps forward. I would like to see wide receivers asserting themselves and really staking claim to those top 3 to 5 slots in the wide receiver rotation. Well, 3 to 4 because CJ Daniels is going to be in that rotation as well. And defense, like we're really rebuilding an entire team. But to the point of the question, I would really, really, really love to hear that the defensive line is taking a big step forward, because that was supposed to be the foundational unit of last year's defense, and they were average at best. Now, I know that there were guys who were battling injury and everything. Ruben Bain, the entire season, basically was playing, 60%. But that really exposed the issues in the secondary, which we knew were there to be exposed, and it was just magnified. So I need the defensive line to take some steps forward. So those would be the top of my brain of things that I would need to see. And then through the development of the players on the roster, having a better idea of what's needed in the spring portal. An extra quarterback for depth, it might not be needed if guys take a step forward. I might feel more comfortable with it. An extra wide receiver might not be needed if guys look like they're taking steps forward, but we're basically all freshmen and sophomores, save CJ Daniels and Ray Joseph. So those are just some of my thoughts at the beginning. But yeah, really taking the time to work and develop technique. 3 days upcoming in this next week, and then a week off for spring break, and then going to hit the back half or the back 80% of spring practice.
Falconer TRX. He's here, he's in the building, and therefore we've officially started a show. Thank you for that, sir.
My guy.
When you talk about the defense needing to be built from the ground up to a certain extent,
yeah,
that's obviously largely due to a new defensive coordinator. From a personnel standpoint, what are the starters lost, the impact players, you start 11 guys, you probably have 15 to 18 that you would consider to be key pieces in a defense. That's largely been overhauled.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I released my spring preview on offense today on stateoftheu.com. Defense I wrote today and is up tomorrow. So this all this stuff you can definitely check out there. But in terms of turnover on the roster, it's minimal up front. You graduate a lot of guys along the defensive line. So your Tyler Barons, your Simeon Barrows, CJ Clark, Marley Cook, Anthony Campbell, and a couple guys, you're like, who? They were older transfer guys who were brought in for depth, but a lot of those are at defensive tackle as opposed to end. But you flip that, but you have a lot of blue chip talent there. So it's mostly everybody back. But again, are you healthy? And what are you doing from a snap allocation standpoint at each position? You have guys like Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain who can play equally inside and out. What are you doing there with that? What are you doing? A Justin Scott, former 5-star. Are you taking a step forward? Marquise Lightfoot, everybody in the building is like, yo, he's Jason Taylor Part 2. This is an All-American. Hayden Lowe, top 15 player, ends up in the rankings of this current class, the same high school as Kayvon Thibodeau, and made favorable comparisons to Kayvon Thibodeau, who played at Oregon and was a top 5 draft pick for Mario Cristobal. Does he come on campus and light the world on fire? And 2 years after Ruben Bain, he's a nailed-on starter outside. I don't know, but there's a lot of talent there. At linebacker, you lose Kiko Mawinoa, who's going to be at the combine and everything, but Popo Aguirre was the number 1 off the bench, right, last year, number 32 at linebacker. He slides in, starts next to Wesley Basaint, who's in his second and a half, like third year starting, right? Foundational guy. And then you got a lot of athletic dudes at linebacker. I want to see how they develop. Cameron Bobby Pruitt, Bobby Washington in that group. You got Adarius Hayes. You got Kellen Wiley in this current class. You got plenty of big athletic dudes, which, if you remember years ago, I said, you need to flip that. You need to get more athletic at linebacker. Miami is more athletic at linebacker now. But what do those guys do? Does Wesley Basaint go from starter to star, right? That's a thing that I want to see. And in the secondary, it's a hockey line change. You depart from the roster a large number of guys. I don't necessarily think that some of them are losses, but Diani Hill, out of here. Jaden Harris, out of here. Miles Munyung, who was a walk-on turned scholarship player, but he never played because he was a walk-on, and he goes to Coastal Carolina, out of here. You see Robbie Washington, the Washington twin of Bobby, the linebacker, who was a receiver, couldn't hack it at receiver. They put him at corner, and then he said, cool, bye. And he transferred to go play offense again. You see so many dudes leaving from the secondary, but then you add Charles Brantley III. You add a Zachariah Poyser, who was a freshman All-American. You add Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona. You add Ethan O'Connor from Washington State, right? You add all these dudes and the recruits on top of that at both positions, right? Dylan Day, who was incredible on specials last year. Markeith Williams, who was a blue chip. There's so many new faces in the secondary, and not even say the probably most talented one, which is Zaquan Patterson, right? So, yeah, it's all new faces, a complete line change. Oh, excuse me, and our incumbent freshman All-American proprietarily from the University of Miami, Romanis O.J. Frederick Jr. So, look, you got 2 freshman All-American coming back, one from Miami, one from Jacksonville State, who's a native Floridian coming home, right? And then all these other dudes. That's where I don't know how it's going to shake out. Right. And I know, like I said, Jadis Richard, he's out for spring because he's still injured because he had a nasty injury at the end of the year. Apparently, Amari Wallace, with that compound fracture on the practice field at Miramar High School before his senior year at Miami Central, had a really nasty compound fracture, but it was just bone, apparently, which, if you're going to have that happen, is the best case scenario. So he's a guy who can step in. Jabari Antoine, Chris Ewald, Bryce Fitzgerald. There's so many new names in the secondary, and it needed to be because last year's secondary was atrocious. So you're going to see guys figuring it out, right? Damari Brown coming back. Is he a corner, or is he somebody like Sheldrick Redwine, who started for 2 years at corner and then transitioned to safety for his junior and senior year in college and then safety in the league? I don't know, but there are a lot of guys with a lot of talent, and even dudes that we brought in from a lot of different places who played a lot of snaps. Put them on the practice field and let them work it out. But yeah, that's really where it's going to be, you're going to figure it out on the fly. I would personally like the law firm of Patterson and Poyser to be your starters at safety and then figure out the rest around that. But in the end, I want the best players to play. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to y'all and say I don't have a preference. I do have a preference. I follow the recruiting very strongly. I've seen guys come up through the ranks. I have my ideas of who I would like to see be there, but let them go and let them earn it. And then, like Mr. AG says, yeah, I'm curious to see what else we're going to add after the spring portal, because once you've seen these guys on the field, you'll have a pretty good idea of who's ready for prime time and who's not. And when you know who's ready for prime time, then you can effectively and hopefully appropriately address any gaps that exist on the roster.
So a couple points off of that. One would be to your point, first and foremost, running back Trey Hall of Ole Miss was reported out for the entire spring, most likely the entire season. So this is a guy who is probably in their top 3 rotation, and he misses the entire spring and most likely the entire season. So yes, stay healthy, keep everybody healthy through the entirety of the spring.